Welcome on my flower hunt for the McGregor Magic Garden Festival. This is a very special part of the Western Cape. This is where the Karoo meets the Fynbos. And some of the plants that grow here are quite spectacular and special and found nowhere else. So this is a flowering spectacle. We've had lots of rain and I'm going to walk in between these shrubs, underneath rocks, and look for interesting plants, weird flowers, odd pollinators, and showcase that for you here online for your virtual flower hunt. Join me. So just outside McGregor, there are fields of white next to the road and in between the shrubbery. And to me, it almost looked like freshly fallen snow on this brown red earth. But once you get closer and you bend down to have a look, you'll see that they are actually bulbs in flower. And not just any bulb, it's part of the iris family. And here they are. This is called Lapeirousia pyramidalis. And it's spectacular. They do vary in color. You get from a almost purpley pink to the more common white form. You'll see on the front lobes of the flower, they've got those spectacular little markings, and that is to guide the pollinator to the flower and then to drink nectar and to pollinate it. Now, pyramidalis means pyramid-like. So once they erupt and they flower after a good rainy season, then they're in abundance. They erupt like pyramids out of the soil. Look at that. It doesn't even have to flower. It's already spectacular. And then the buds would come out of each little bract there. Now, if I bend down to smell the flower, that's when the magic happens. It's with a lot of flowers. You always have to smell them. That's a different story that they tell you. And this one smells like jasmine. A little bit fainter, but almost sweeter. Now, this gets pollinated by the sphinx moth. And sphinx moth hovers. It almost looks like a tiny little sunbird, or they call it hummingbirds in South America. It looks like it's so quick with the wings. But that is the only moth with a proboscis long enough to reach right down all the way to get to the nectar at the bottom of the flower. And once the proboscis of the moth retracts, it cools up below the moth, and then the moth go and visit another flower. Specially designed to be pollinated just about only by that moth. But isn't this spectacular? So once you see them, please bend down, have a sniffy, and enjoy this beautiful, exquisite iris in your valley. So on your way to McGregor, the area here is well known for its vegies, and they're so bright in colors, luminescent yellows and oranges and reds and even whites. But there's one of the plants here that I think are even brighter, and I think most people driving past just think it's one of the gorgeous vegies, but it's not. This is called a harbosie of Hirpicium integrifolium, and this lump, beautiful shaped cushion of sunshine yellow flowers is probably one of the most focal and gorgeous plants you have on your outcrops here. It's just beautiful. Harbosie because the leaves are full of hair. Even the florets have all those hairy bits to them. But look how dense the flowers are, and there's the pollinator, all the little beetles running around on the flowers. Now, there's an interesting story about this plant. If you see this plant, it's very palatable to antelope or wildlife, sheep, cows. So if you drive past a piece of land where there are a fair amount of this in the veld, then you know that this piece of land is managed well. Because this is one of the plants that first get eaten up by overgrazing, where there's either wildlife or sheep farming, or cows for that matter. So this is a good indication that the piece of land that you're driving past, or the farm that you are buying or having a look at, is well managed. So that's how subtle plants can also give you messages about the landscape. So this is Euphorbia mauritanica, and right now there's the pollinator, which I'm trying to find. There's another one. Here's another one. Isn't that the most spectacular ant with that golden abdomen? And here it's drinking, and you can see its head is full of nectar, and where it's drinking, it's a little cup full of sweet stuff. And it's just loving it. And see how it's pollinating at the moment the flower with the stamen rubbing onto its head, taking up some of the pollen from a next door flower. The flowers are bisexual, so you have male and female here. Euphorbias are also a very popular garden plant throughout the world, and this is probably the most prominent one on the copies here of McGregor. It's a hardy plant and great for a garden too. And this floral mass you can't miss. You see this a mile away. So the stems are green, and that means it photosynthesizes through the stem. It's got leaves at the moment during the wet season, but once the dry summer comes they fall off. So they're very, they're not there for long. They're just there to pretty up the flowers really. There are some aphids on the flowers too, and they also secrete sucrose, sugar, and the ants also harvest that. So they kind of protect the aphids and farm them. Beautiful, neat bush. They do have a milky substance to it, so I wouldn't recommend getting that in your eye or even on your skin, as that could burn. I had a little taste of the nectar in these cups and the flowers, and it definitely is very, very sweet, but don't do that. If you damage the flower and that milk comes into your tongue, it's gonna be worse than a peri-peri chicken. So great plant, a very prominent architectural plant of the Karoo, and one not to be missed. And just isn't that pollinator just spectacular? So one of the most iconic flowers for this region around McGregor must be the rooi vygie, also known as Robertson vygie. And here it is. It's just starting to flower, and this fire engine red display is just mind-boggling. So its name is Drosanthemum speciosum. Now, where does the name come from? Drosanthemum, Greek, means drosos, means dew-like, anthem, flower, so dew-like flower. Because a lot of the vyegies have a little glitter on the petals of the flowers, not this one. And that glitter represents early morning dew when the sun just rises. Speciosum meaning glorious, fantastic, and you cannot get anything more glorious than these flowers. It's quite a common garden plant, and you get them in a yellow, orange, or even this beautiful red with a black center. Isn't that just accentuating the pollen right in the middle? I've seen this being pollinated here by little flies and all kinds of insects really. Now, a plant like this, I would say, lasts for about 3 years, and then it starts to deteriorate. So once it becomes sticky and hardwoody, then the flowers get less and less every season. So I would say if you have it in your garden after every 3 years, do replace it with a new one to get the spectacle and covering of flowers. Now also, if you look at the flowers, you'll see there's a double layer of petals, and that's to make this color even more intense to attract the pollinators. There's so many flowers in flower around here now, so each one needs to, almost like a peacock, show as much of its vibrancy as possible. Not a lot of leaves, but the flowers make up for that. So one of the most spectacular members of the iris family is in flower now, and this is one that I found here just outside McGregor. Now we're in the Karoo, and this is bone dry in summer, and now we had an abundance of rain this season, more than we usually have, so they are out and showcasing their gorgeous, gorgeous flowers. And this is Ferraria variabilis. You can see its typical iris-like leaves architecturally, and this blue, grey, green, and then you have that flowers. Now if you walk next to the pathway here where we're walking now, you hardly see them. You have to look for them because they're so low, only about 15 centimeters high, and the flowers vary. That's where the name comes of variabilis comes from, because I've seen with darker flowers, even with lighter flowers, more orangey, more sandy color, but this was just catching my eye. This is this golden stripy one. Look at the flower, you'll see the curliness of the petals. It almost looks like a sea slug. The gold inside, the center of the flower has that furry, almost insect-like look. And you see the abundance of flowers. Now this is 3 plants together, which I don't see a lot. Usually it's just a single plant with one little flower open. But this is a huge display. Now the scent of this one, it does vary from flower to flower. So I was at the earlier one and it had a sweet scent. This one is a bit more stinky. To me it's almost like dishwashing liquid. After you've washed dishes and you smell your hands, it's got that scent to it. Not a very nice one. But it's spectacular. Also the flowers are sequential flowering, so these flowers only last a day, and tomorrow the next one will pop up, and so forth and so forth, and they flower for quite some time. It's widespread, so they actually come from all the way from Namibia right down here past the Karoo. So gorgeous to see. One of South Africa's prominent iris family members, an iris that has such unique flowers like this, the coloring and the intense patterns and display of each petal to lure that pollinator closer is just remarkable. So one of the world's most popular cut flowers must be the Gladioli, and Southern Africa has most of the Gladiolus species on the planet. There's about 250 different species, and they're represented all over Southern Africa, even here in the arid desert Karoo. And today I found one in flower, and this is Gladiolus venustus. Venustus meaning charming, and how charming is that flower? Look at the prominent coloration on the petals, very sharp petals, the downward looking ones. I saw some ants inside. They were looking for nectar and also pollinating the flowers. And Gladiolus, it reminds me also of the name gladiator. Look at the sword-like leaves of the plant. As a sword, as the gladiators fought in the olden days. Now this plant's also using the shrubbery, the dry sticks, to kind of climb through and keep it upright in the wind, and also hide from the porcupines. It loves this clay soil that is growing under, and there are quite a lot of them. So they grow from Neverville all the way down towards Worcester here in the Karoo, towards the Eastern Cape. Gorgeous plant to see. The area where I'm sitting now, during summer months, it looks barren. There's hardly a plant, some dried out succulents, and rock hard soil that's cracked open without a drop of moisture for miles away. But after the first rains, pioneers start to grow. And one of the plants that erupt first through its dried out leaves and seemingly dead looking base is the Gazania. And this is it. This is Gazania krebsiana. This is a plant that the horticultural world used extensively, all the way from Disneyland to Milan in the pots on their verandas. We've all had this in our garden. You get a range of colors of krebsiana, from yellow to cream to red to orange. Glossy leaf, huge leaves, small leaves. This is a pioneer plant, so that means its roots are very, very shallow. So the first moisture it receives, it will immediately start to grow. This is an easy plant for any garden. It loves full sun and well-drained soil. But this is not the only plant here. This is a Garden of Eden. Everything has erupted in flower around me, and one of the most beautiful ones is this. This is Moraea polyanthos, or called the blue tulip, blowtulp. It's part of the iris family. Just look at the red, yellow stripes leading it towards the pollen. Loads of them around here. There's some other fahy types You almost can't see the leaves. It's just covered in flowers. There's Albucas with a sweet scent. It almost got the colors of a 7-Eleven shop. And some of them have curly leaves, some of them are huge, some of them are upright, some of them are pendular. There are also some Gladiolus, miniaturized by this harsh environment. And this is the reason why the Karoo is so special during summer. The abundance of flowers for the short time only. And this year we had lots of flowers. And just look at the spectacle around me. No landscaper can create this unique and special environment. So one of my favorite group of plants is pelargoniums. Now pelargoniums have been used all around the world. Whether you go to the UK and see them trailing down the hanging baskets or pots, or go to Disneyland and see them used en masse in between the rides. Pelargoniums have provided the world with colour like no other plant has. And Southern Africa is the hub of where all of those pelargoniums originate. And here in the Karoo, we have no shortage of pelargoniums. We have a wide range here, from succulent pelargoniums to hairy ones, to big ones, to trailing ones. And today I found one that's very special because its leaves are so beautiful, its flowers are gorgeous, the form of the plant is just incredible. And this plant grows between the Fynbos, which starts here, and the Karoo succulents, which start literally a few hundred meters away from this side. So this is where the Fynbos and the succulent Karoo meet. And this is where Pelargonium ovale grows. Ovale meaning egg-shaped. So if you look at the leaves, it's got an egg-shaped oval leaf. Very silver, hairy, beautiful architectural shape, and also lovely color, contrast color in your garden. The flowers have got this butterfly airiness to them. The slightest wind blowing over them is like the petals are just fluttering like butterflies. I've seen them being pollinated by little long-billed flies that suck the nectar deep inside the flowers. Now I've seen them around growing here where there's pink ones and white ones, so they do vary a little bit in color. Also Pelargonium, pelagos meaning stalk shaped. So if you look at seed, here's one almost ripe. You'll see that the seed has got a stalk-billed shape. And when they burst open, once they dry, they've got a twirling action to them. So they land on the soil and the wind takes the seed and it kind of drills into the ground. And so the seed gets actually planted by the wind in the soil. This is a gorgeous plant for any garden, in a pot, in a hanging basket, in the garden, and one of our very gorgeous species. So when we think of flowers, we think of that beautiful scent that they have, say roses or sweet peas. But there are plants that have manipulated their scent in such a way to produce a stench. And that stench or vile odor is their key to survival. And today I found one of those plants. We're outside McGregor in the Western Cape. This is Karoo, very dry and hot, except for today. And this is the magical plant. This is called Stapelia hirsuta, or the starfish flower. If you quickly have a look at the flower, you'll see that it does look like a starfish on the seabed. But that's not where the magic lies. The magic lies where this plant attracts its pollinator. Now, other flowers would attract butterflies or bees, but not this one. It goes for flies. Now, what does attract a fly? So if you leave your food outside and it gets rotten, the flies would come. The same here. So this plant tries to mimic a dead animal. Animal that's been dead for about a week. Because if I smell this flower It reeks. It smells like a rotten carcass that has been in the sun for about a week. And that is the key. So if you look closely at the flower, you'll see that it's fluffy. Hirsuta means furry. It's got the fur, just like a dead animal carcass. And you look at the texture of the flower, it looks like skin, almost where the fur is already starting to fall off because of decomposing. Now the fly is attracted by it, and the more sunny it gets, the more vile the stench becomes. The fly lands on the flower and then walks around looking for an entrance to actually go and lay its eggs in the carcass so that its larvae can feed on the meat. Now it can't find it, but still it gets fooled by the flower, because if I look closely I can see that there are fly eggs laid onto this flower. This is quite remarkable how this plant, this Stapelia, even its leaves, look at that succulent leaves, looks like bones. How this plant knows how a dead carcass look, feel and smells to attract one pollinator to its flower, and so pollinate it and secures its survival. So one of the biggest proteas that you'll find is Protea nitida. Nitida meaning shiny. And look at this huge flower. It's like a massive glitter ball when the sun is out, or a huge pincushion. Now Protea nitida is quite common here between the mountains of McGregor and Grayton, and they are basically the largest shrub you'll see here. Now in the olden days, there were no big trees in the Cape. Cape's known for having no trees. We have so much wind. Now when the settlers came in from Holland or the Netherlands and abroad, they needed building material to make wagon wheels, wagon parts, some parts for houses, and this was the plant that they used, because they get to about 5-6 meters high, the old ones, and so they were cut down by the thousands by the settlers and used to make wagon wheels to go and explore the countrysides. Now it's also the biggest one on the landscape, and so the baboons use it as a lookout point. So the baboon that needs to signal danger would sit high up on a wagon wheel or on a nitida and then shout if it spots a leopard, or humans for that matter. Here's a bud starting to open. It's just gorgeous on its own. Now this is growing throughout the Western Cape, even to the Eastern Cape, so it's widespread. Now there's another use that they have. So the leaves were taken and then put in a saucepan with some rock candy and an old rusty nail, and that was mixed all together to make a rudimentary ink. So it's got its uses too. Gorgeous, gorgeous Protea. One of the biggest you'll ever see. Protea nitida. So I just spoke to you about Protea nitida and its extravagant, huge, big flowers, glitter balls. Now that Protea is showcasing its flower to the world around it and advertising its nectar to flying insects and birds. Now there are some Proteas that are a bit more subdued, a little bit more grounded. And this is it. This is Protea humiflora. Humi meaning grounded. Humi is where the word humble comes from. And this is exactly what this Protea is. It seems like it is a dried out old shrub which has got no flowers on, and you might never see a flower when you drive up here, because its magic and its life is underneath. Let me show you. So if I lift up the old grey branches, you would see that's in full flower. Not just one, not just two, lots of them. And here they are. They're all showing towards the ground. Why? Because this plant has developed a special relationship with rodents, animals. And at night, it's got a yeasty scent, and that attracts rodents. And they would run up the stem, come to the flower, lick the nectar, and so pollinate the flower. Here's one that's exactly open, and tonight a rodent will come and visit this flower, and then run to the next shrub and do the same and pollinate them. You'll see there are a lot of old flower buds of previous years. This is a very old plant. All the seed of many years ago are still in there. They haven't been released, and the plant will only do so once a fire comes through. And once a fire comes through, this old plant will die, but the seeds hopefully will germinate well. So an extraordinary plant with an incredible relationship with animals. And it's a plant that when you walk past, you would never ever think has such beauty, ivory red colors underneath hidden. Next to the road going into McGregor, there's a ground cover that catches the eye. And it's such a unique color, this lime shocking green color. And this is called Grielum humifusum, or pitsnot, or duikerroot, duikerkos. Why duikerkos or pitsnot? Well, if you pull out one of these annual plants, then you'll see the root. It's very slimy, and it's an excellent source of moisture to parts of the animal kingdom and also humans. That's why duikers dig it up, and then they would nibble on this as an extra part of moisture for the diet. Now, as I say, it's an annual plant. It's got this lime green color going into white and yellow, pollinated by all kinds of insects. And I think this plant that's growing next to the road here should be available in seed packets for South Africans to sow in their gardens. What a show, and what a unique color to have. I hope you guys enjoyed our virtual hike today for the McGregor Magic Garden Festival. This is a place with unique plants, and when you do your schedules to go flower hunting, it's not just the West Coast that has that abundance of color. Here we have just as much. And the sun is setting, and so the flowers are starting to close today. But I hope I inspired you to come and visit this area, and also look at plants in a different way and look for them more closely. Until next year, until the next rainy season,